So let's just start with a really simple question. When you walk into that gym, you feel the cold steel of a barbell or you hear your feet hitting the treadmill. Why? Why are you actually doing it? Just think about that for a second. What is the real goal here?
Okay, let's get into it because what we're about to explore is this massive shift that's happening in fitness right now. You could even call it a revolution. We're seeing this move away from training just for show and a return to training to go. It's all about getting back to a functional, capable strength that actually serves you out in the real world.
You know, to really get where this is all going, we've got to look back. And I mean way back, before there were gyms, before mirrors, before a single bicep was ever curled just for looks. We need to understand what strength's original mandate was. And it was brutally simple. It was about survival.
This timeline, man, it really puts our modern gym culture into perspective. For 99% of human history, strength was all about utility. Could you haul your food? Could you build shelter? Could you defend your family? Then the industrial age hits, and that connection starts to get a little weak. But the real explosion in just focusing on aesthetics, that's just a tiny recent blip on the radar, totally driven by silver screen icons who taught us to value the look over the actual function.
And this perfectly captures the biological reality of it. For our ancestors, having big, puffy muscles just for show would have been a huge liability. I mean, they were metabolically expensive. They just burned way too many calories for very little real-world benefit. If you were all show, you were probably the first one to go when things got tough. So that brings us to the modern era, to what we can call the Great Aesthetic Pivot. This is the point where we started, on a massive scale, to build bodies that looked like Greek statues, but, a lot of the time, they moved like they were rusted shut. And let's be super clear about what we're talking about. Aesthetic training, or hypertrophy, is when you're building muscle pretty much exclusively for how it looks. Now, it's not a bad thing in itself, but its main goal is visual appeal, not real-world performance or capability. This is the bedrock of modern bodybuilding culture. Okay, and this is where you start to see the cracks appear, right? When the form is the only goal, what happens when life actually demands function? We're about to break down why those show muscles can sometimes let you down right when you need them the most. It really all starts with a completely different philosophy of movement. Traditional aesthetic training is built on one thing: isolation. Think about a bicep curl. The entire point is to work one muscle and one muscle only. But combat sports, and honestly most of life, it demands integration. A judo throw isn't a bicep exercise or a back exercise, it's everything, all of it, working as one explosive, coordinated unit. And it's the same exact thing when we talk about how we generate power. Most gym movements are linear. You're pushing up, you're pulling down. But real-world power, whether you're throwing a punch or just moving furniture, is almost always rotational. It comes from twisting through your hips and your core. So that 400-pound bench press, it doesn't mean a whole lot if you can't generate power where it really counts, in that twisting motion. And then you've got the gas tank issue. Those big, showy muscles are absolute oxygen hogs. In a high-stress situation, a real struggle, or even just a 3-minute sparring round, they can lead to you gassing out incredibly fast. Why? Because they haven't been trained for that kind of intense, sustained output. So, because people are waking up to these problems, it's leading to what you could call the combat rediscovery. And believe me, it's about so much more than just fighting. It's about using this kind of training to reclaim a lost sense of physical competence and maybe, surprisingly, a really deep sense of human connection. This quote right here just nails the psychological shift. The gym mirror, it reflects your body image. It's how you look. But a sparring session, a real test under pressure, that gives you competence, an undeniable, earned knowledge of what you can actually do. And it's not just a feeling, right? There's actual data here. A study in BMC psychology found that people in combat sports reported way higher levels of self-efficacy, which is just a fancy way of saying your core belief that you can handle whatever life throws at you, compared to people in traditional weightlifting programs. They also showed higher emotional stability. It's not just about feeling stronger, it's about building a more resilient mind. And this is where it gets really interesting, especially when we talk about men's mental health. Combat sports often act as a kind of help-seeking Trojan horse. You've got a lot of men who would never, ever consider going to therapy, but they'll absolutely go to a boxing or jiu-jitsu gym to manage their stress and aggression, and the science backs it up. It measurably lowers the stress hormone cortisol and actually reduces aggression outside of the gym. Beyond just the individual, these gyms are filling a huge societal void.
With other community hubs disappearing, the combat gym is stepping up to become the modern third place, that space that isn't home and isn't work. It's a powerful antidote to loneliness, a place where your job title doesn't matter one bit. The CEO and the plumber are just two training partners, completely equal on the mats.
Now, hearing all this, you might be thinking you have to quit your job and become a pro fighter. Not at all. The barrier to entry is lower than it's ever been. You can microdose this kind of training with 45-minute express classes that are designed for the 9-to-5 professional. And the efficiency is just off the charts. I mean, come on, getting a 90-minute cardio burn in just 30 minutes of bag work, that's a game changer.
So, after all that, what's the final verdict? It really all boils down to one fundamental choice you have to make about your own strength. Are you training for the mirror, or are you training for life?
The ultimate goal of this functional approach is to build what's known as the sheepdog mentality. And what that is, it's this deep psychological peace that you get from just knowing that you're capable. When you faced real pressure in a controlled environment, you're not afraid of it anymore. And that quiet confidence makes you a calmer, more deliberate person everywhere, from the boardroom to your own home.
Look, at the end of the day, it comes down to this one simple truth. The mirror can tell you a lie. It can amplify your insecurities, or it can inflate your ego. The mats, though, the mats are brutally honest. They don't lie. They could not care less what you look like. They reveal your resilience, your character. They tell you the truth about who you really are. So we end right back where we started with a question, but it has a little more weight now. This isn't just about building a body that looks like you can do something. It's about building a body that can actually do it. So I'll ask you again. Which one is it going to be for you? Are you training for the mirror or are you training for life?